She was born in silence, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that makes adults nervous and children invisible. She never cried out in pain, never babbled, never called her mother's name across the house, not once. Doctors said she'd never speak. Some assumed she'd never understand. Others never even tried to find out. But what if silence isn't absence? What if it's just a different kind of language? One the rest of us have forgotten how to hear. Because while the world talked over her, she was listening, watching, learning everything we missed in our noise. And when she finally shared what she'd been holding in, not with sound, but with soul, she didn't just break the silence, she transformed it. This is the story of a girl who was born without a voice, but gave the world something louder than words. And what she said, without ever saying a word, might stay with you forever. Her name was Emery, 3 syllables that felt like a song to her parents. Soft, lyrical, chosen with care. But outside their home, almost no one said it out loud. Not because they didn't know it, but because no one waited long enough to ask who she really was. Emery was born with a rare neurological condition, one that left her physically capable of sound, but neurologically silent. The brain-to-mouth connection never formed. No crying at birth, no cooing, no first word. Her parents didn't panic at first. They believed in late bloomers, in patience, in miracles. But the milestones never came. No dada, no mama, no, or mine, or more. And the world, with all its busy forms and systems, moved on without her. She was given labels before she could give her opinion. Nonverbal, severely impaired, special needs, each one clinical, each one heavy, none of them hers. Emery had a name, but the world gave her a file number instead. She was there in every classroom photo, but never in the class discussion. At birthday parties, she clapped but couldn't cheer. At recess, she laughed, but no one heard it. And maybe the cruelest part? People mistook her silence for emptiness, as if volume was the only measure of worth. They spoke around her, over her, sometimes even about her, while she sat in the room. But Emery was always listening. Every word, every sigh, every unspoken feeling hiding behind polite smiles. And while no one else heard her name, she was quietly building a new language, one without sound, one made of shape and space and soul. How does a girl with no voice find a way to speak so the world has to listen? At school, Emery was always placed by the window, not because she lacked the light, but because she never raised her hand. She didn't speak out of turn, didn't call out answers, didn't interrupt or complain. And so, to most teachers, she was easy, low maintenance. Such a well-behaved little girl. They marked her present every day, but no one really asked how she was present, what she saw, what she thought, what she wished she could say. She sat in rooms full of shouting, laughter, arguing, singing during morning assembly. And through it all, she stayed still, not because she didn't feel joy, but because there was no way to join in. She was the quietest child in the loudest room, and no one noticed how loud the silence had become inside her. It's easy to mistake silence for compliance, to assume stillness means peace. But Emery's silence wasn't peace, it was pressure. A weight pressing down on her chest every time she saw her classmates answer a question, asked to go to the bathroom, tell a joke, or whisper a secret. She had ideas, she had questions, she had whole stories folded up inside her, but they had nowhere to go. Her parents tried everything: picture cards, sign language apps, tablet voices with buttons that said things like, yes, no, more please, I feel sad. And while these tools helped, they never felt like her. Not really. They were fragments, pre-written phrases, a menu of borrowed words in a voice that never matched the one inside her. Because Emery didn't just want to respond to the world, she wanted to shape it. She didn't want to push a button that said, I'm hungry. She wanted to describe the crunch of her favorite cereal, the cold bite of milk against her teeth, the joy of a banana slice placed just right. But the world didn't wait for poetry from people like Emery. It barely waited for sentences. And so she stopped trying to answer, stopped reaching for the tablet, stopped pressing yes when she meant maybe. Instead, she watched, she studied, how people shifted in their chairs when they were nervous, how their voices cracked when they were about to lie, how their eyes said what their mouths were too polite to express. She saw it all, felt it all. And one afternoon, when her father left his sketchbook on the kitchen table, something inside her stirred. She picked up the pencil, pressed it to paper, not to draw, not at first, but to release. A shape, a shadow, a flicker of expression she had no words for, but her fingers understood. That day, for the first time, Emery didn't just sit in silence, she answered it. What she drew next would speak louder than anything the world expected. At first, her pencil barely moved. The page felt strange beneath her hand, fragile, like it might reject her. She wasn't drawn to impress. She wasn't even trying to make something. She was trying to let something out, something that had been waiting for years. A line, a curve, a shape she couldn't name, but felt familiar under her fingertips. The page stayed silent, but for the first time, her silence had shape. She drew a girl, small, sitting alone at the edge of a crowded playground, her hands in her lap, her mouth slightly open, like she might be mid-sentence if only the sentence had somewhere to go. The people around her were scribbles, quick, blurry shapes. They moved fast, but the girl in the middle, she was still, detailed, sharp, clear. Emery stared at what she'd drawn, and something inside her softened. Not relief, not pride, recognition. She had found herself. That first drawing led to another and another. She drew faces, so many faces. Not the kind you find in portraits or yearbooks, the kind you see when someone's trying not to cry in public, when they're pretending to be fine, but their eyebrows give them away, when they laugh, but only with their mouth. Her drawing said things like, I see you trying to be brave. I know you're tired even if you smile. I know what it feels like to be in the room, but not in the conversation. She didn't need captions. The images said it all. One showed her mother standing at the sink, shoulders tight, eyes glazed over. Emery had drawn tiny streaks of light coming from the faucet, like her mother's emotions were spilling out with the water. Another was of her little brother. He was hugging a shape, a soft outline of a person with no face. The caption, added later by her dad, read, I hear you anyway. Her drawings weren't just good, they were honest. Too honest sometimes. Her parents cried the first time they flipped through her sketchbook. Not because the art was beautiful, but because it showed them things they hadn't dared say out loud. That Emery had been paying attention, that she knew. All along, not just her own pain, theirs too. She couldn't speak, but she could translate emotion better than anyone they knew. And in that moment, the question wasn't, what if Emery never speaks? It became, what else has she already said? without a word. What happens when the world sees what she's drawn? It wasn't a gallery, it wasn't a launch, it wasn't planned at all. One morning, Emery left her sketchbook open on the kitchen table. Her little brother, only 7, noticed one of the drawings. It was of him. In the sketch, he was hugging a quiet figure, a person drawn without a face but filled with warmth. The caption, scrawled at the bottom in her careful handwriting, simply read, "You hear me even when no one else does." He smiled when he saw it, didn't say anything, just ran and showed it to his teacher. That teacher took a photo, posted it online with the caption of her own. This was drawn by a girl who's never spoken a word, but somehow this says everything. No hashtags, no promotion, just a moment of truth. Within 48 hours, it was everywhere. Tens of thousands of people saw it, then hundreds of thousands. Parents commented, "This feels like my daughter. I didn't know how to explain it until now." Speech therapists wrote, "This changes how I think about communication." People who had never heard the word nonverbal before began sharing it with tears in their eyes. It wasn't just art, it was translation, from a world of silence to a world of sound. And for the first time, people listened. Requests began pouring in. Teachers wanted copies to hang in classrooms. Hospitals asked if they could use it in their therapy rooms. One parent asked for permission to tattoo it on her arm, in memory of her non-speaking son who had passed away. And Emery? She watched it unfold from her living room couch, legs crossed, stylus in hand, drawing the whole time. When her parents told her the post had gone viral, she didn't look up. She just drew a new picture, a crowd of people standing in a noisy room, but one little girl sitting in the center, and every single person was facing her, listening. That drawing became the first image in a new project, something Emery named herself using only a keyboard, quiet eyes, a digital gallery, an online space where her portraits would live, not just hers, but of others too. People began sending in stories of their children, their students, their siblings. Emery would read them, then draw what she saw between the lines: a mother's exhaustion, a child's anxiety, the invisible grief of being misunderstood every day, and every portrait ended the same way, with eyes, not blank, not distant, but quiet. Eyes that asked nothing and offered everything. But Emery wasn't finished. She was about to teach the world something even greater: how to lead without sound. Emery never spoke over anyone. She didn't raise her voice to command a room, didn't take the lead in group projects, didn't call meetings or shout directions. But still, people followed her, not because she demanded attention, but because she deserved it. There was something about her presence, quiet but unmistakable. In a world full of noise, Emery became the one everyone turned to when they needed stillness, clarity, truth. Soon she was invited to schools, conferences, even hospitals, not to speak, but to teach. Her workshops didn't begin with introductions. They began with silence. Participants would walk into a room with sketch pads placed in front of them, no talking allowed. Instead, Emery would draw Lev on a screen, one line at a time, one expression at a time, until the room, full of teachers, therapists, parents, was completely still. And then she'd turn the screen off, point to the room, to the people, and wait. Eventually, someone would whisper, "Are we supposed to notice each other?" She would nod, because the workshop was never about art. It was about awareness. How often do we really see someone without asking them to perform? How often do we give people space to express what words can't carry? Emery taught people to wait, to pay attention to micro expressions, to value eye contact, to stop assuming that silence means nothing is happening. In her world, silence meant everything, and people began to change. Teachers stopped talking over students who were quiet. Therapists started introducing art before language. Parents created new rituals, like drawing mood portraits with their kids before bedtime. Because of Emery, communication wasn't just what you said, it was what you noticed, what you felt, what you respected. Emery never once stood at a podium, never said, "Follow me," never gave a speech. But still, she led, with her eyes, with her hands, with a voice the world could no longer ignore. She didn't just teach people to listen to her, she taught them to listen to each other. And in doing so, she gave everyone something we didn't know we needed: a slower pace, a fuller presence, a deeper kind of listening. But Emery's story isn't just about art or silence, it's about what she gave the world and how it keeps echoing. Years passed. Emery's hair grew longer, her hands grew steadier, and the world grew quieter because of her. Not silent, just more intentional, more aware. One fall afternoon, a new exhibit opened in a small museum tucked behind a busy city library. It wasn't flashy, no bright banners, no loud music, just a single sign above the entrance: Quiet Eyes, a gallery of what we never say. Curated by Emery Wren. Inside, the walls held dozens of framed sketches, portraits that didn't look posed, they looked caught, as if plucked mid-thought from the minds of people too afraid to speak. There was a child holding a broken toy but smiling at a sibling, a teenage girl staring into a mirror with one eye half closed, an old man in a wheelchair reaching toward something just out of frame. Each sketch had a simple plaque beneath it, not a name, not a diagnosis, but a sentence. This is what I felt when I lost my voice. This is the face I make when I pretend I'm okay. This is how I looked when I missed her. Visitors walked slowly, some alone, some hand in hand. They didn't talk much, but many cried. Some sat on the bench in the center of the room, where one final sketch rested, a self-portrait. Emery, seated at her desk, stylus in hand, a small smile on her lips, her other hand not drawing but reaching outward, toward the viewer, toward you, not asking to be heard, just inviting you to listen. A mother knelt beside her son, nonverbal, just like Emery once was. She signed gently to him. He nodded, then walked up to the sketch, placed his palm flat on the glass, and smiled, because even now, years later, Emery was still speaking, not with sound, but with presence, with truth, with a voice that never needed volume to change the world. Not all voices are loud, not all leaders speak, and not all stories need words to leave a mark. Emery's life didn't follow the script. She never said, "I love you," never stood on a stage, never gave a speech. But still, she taught thousands how to hear what's never said, to read between the silences, to see the soul beneath the surface. She reminded us that listening is an act of love, that presence, real presence, means waiting, noticing, honoring what we cannot fix, but can still hold. Maybe you know someone like Emery, someone whose voice isn't loud, but whose truth is undeniable. Maybe you are that someone. If this story moved something in you, if it reminded you to slow down, to pay closer attention, to lead with presence, we'd love for you to share it. Leave a comment below. What's something you've always felt but never said out loud? And if you believe in telling stories that challenge assumptions, that honor the unseen, and that prove we're all able in every way, please subscribe, because the world is full of voices waiting to be heard. And sometimes the quietest ones say the most.